Hello guys, welcome to Oasis, a community grounded in reason celebrating the human experience. I am glad to see everybody here. And we're going to get started with some music from Hunter Nelson, whom I went to high school with. And he's awesome, and I hear him play at Shakespeare all the time.
Alright, so yes, I'm Hunter, and I have to go to high school with her. This song is from a rock opera I wrote. It's about the evil doctor trying to take advantage of the aliens.
Dr. Drew was a derelict dude. He asked his cigarette and said, "Come on through." We've heard so much, you know I'm quite a fan. Proof at last our lives were planned, and I can't wait to finally see you're gonna be the find of the century. And everything is looking great, and can't you see you're gonna be the find of the century. Press the waves, it won't take long. Just a sample here or there, and then you're gone. Before you leave, wouldn't it be cute if you and me took a photo shoot? You spell me in the jungle. Oh, never mind, the public's gonna love my find of the century. And everything is looking up. Can't you see you're gonna be my find of the century? You're my find of the century. You're my find of the century. All right.
All right, so lower your standards because TC's not with me. Tried to write a waltz, tried to be like, know my music theory and write a waltz, but I wrote a song at 6/8 apparently.
You put your ear to the right door, you'll hear of the sage on chimney rock. They say he carries an empty pot full of the arms for the poor. He talks in rhymes, rushed riddles, and no one can tell if he's all there or not. But he'll give you the scare of a guy to know there's more. Some say he's blind but all seeing, and some say he's deaf as a stone. Left all alone all his life, no wife, no kids, no telephone. Thou won't doorstep I was standing. Oh, to know there's more. He opened the door. And he took me in the darkest room I'd ever been in, stripped out like Yoko and then I took a seat on mahogany. He said, son, you best start listening. And he told me about tomorrow. He told me about the past. And then to this day, my friends, I can't tell the first from the last. No. To know there is more. I said, what's it all for? And he said, life is just a solar system spinning in our solar system. Stolen wisdom flows within us, effortless like no religion ever coulda, woulda, shoulda. Hare Krishna, Christ and Buddha move ya, move to improve ya. Get those fingers pointed to ya. Happiness is laughing when you're out of breath, standing at the edge and jump. Not care for the aftermath and crash into a new regime where it's you and me, and we truly see the genius of the gods and their lunacy, but letting you and me be you and me. To know there's more for you and me. Know there's more.
All right.
Wow. I kind of feel like maybe not talking today, just letting you do your thing. Good to see you all. This is the place where we do what we call our community moment, where someone from the Oasis community gets up and shares. It can sometimes it's about their journey. Sometimes it's like Vic had some incredible observations for us last week, and so it's just kind of a open journal time. And this week we're going to welcome our first president of the board of Houston Oasis, Gary Williams, is going to come up and give us a community moment today.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to kind of give you, at this point, a little bit of an insight into kind of how we got where we are and what's going on here. To begin with, just to give you a little bit of my background, I kind of come from a mixed background. My mother got religion, sort of, when I was a teenager. I spent some time in a church, completely resisting it, not understanding what it was about. Gave it up. I mean, to give myself, to age myself a little bit, a lot of my philosophical and religious beliefs came from Star Trek, the original series. I actually modeled myself after Spock, and so I had a tendency to reject anything that couldn't be handled by logic, which has its own problems when you're dealing with a teenager, because quite frankly, dealing with teenage girls and teenage boys, logic doesn't have a lot to do with it. So went to college and met my wife, and found out that love and life are not logical, and that emotions and people are not logical, and you can't deal with them completely on a logical basis. And my wife and I clicked, and we've been married 30 some odd years. But we did have some disagreements about religion and what to do about religion. We spent a fair amount of time having arguments and getting to the point where we just put it down because we couldn't come to a conclusion. About the time our children were born, Judy started going back to church, and being that I wanted to be with my family, I went with her. And I met some people there, and I said, okay, I'll give this thing a try. I'll give this church thing a try. I went in with the idea, though, that I was rational and that that I would not, without firm proof, I was not going to believe in any sort of metaphysical coincidence or anything like that. I was going to take it the way it was, and that, as far as I could tell, Christians didn't have any specific protections against the universe, or they weren't going to whatever, and that nothing in my 20 years sojourn in the church changed my mind about that. But I also found that there were a lot of good things in a church environment. People did care about each other, that people did get together, that there were a lot of community things. And so, and we moved from church to church to church because every time we got into a church where people started talking about hate or about sin or about damnation, we went, no, that's not us. Finally, we found Mike's church, and a lot of people of you talked about Mike's Living Word Lutheran. And so we followed him there. And then when Mike left that, he founded a little church called Theophilus. And after a year of that, we found that. I then got conned into being president of that church and then my pastor came out on national TV, and this caused a certain amount of consternation. And Mike still owes me a little bit for that one. But when I looked at it, and I looked at what happened, that's when I became aware of something called the Clergy Project. Now, most of you here may be familiar with it, but the Clergy Project is for a group of people who are pastors who have lost their faith. Now think about this. If you're a pastor and you've lost your faith, you are in a world of hurt. If you lose your faith in your spouse, or your spouse cheats on you, you've lost your family, but you still have your job. If you get fired from your job, generally your family's there to support you. But if you lose your faith as a pastor, you often lose both. You lose all of the friends you had, you lose all of the community you had, you lose everything. And that just seems wrong to me. That particular thing just looked at me and I said, these people need help. We need somewhere those people can go. Also, pastors, as a class, are good people. I mean, they may have some ideas that I don't necessarily agree with, but they're out there trying to help people. They're trying, most of the time, the theology is not what it's about. I mean, how often do people actually go into church and discuss theology? They discuss what other people are wearing, who's gotten married, who's having babies, all that sort of stuff. Nobody's sitting about asking about the Trinity or whether transubstantiation is real. So it seemed to me that there's a resource there that's not that needed that could be used, and that we were throwing away for no good reason, quite frankly. My logic kicked in, and I said, okay, there's got to be a way to fix this. So at that time, I circled back with Mike, and we started talking about it, and what Mike wanted to do next, what we wanted to do next. And we came up with this idea of, well, okay, how about we have a church without the theology? How about we build something? Will it work? I don't know. This is an experiment. I mean, this is still an experiment in my mind. It seems to be working. I mean, I'm very impressed by the number of people and type of people we've got here. But what we're trying to do is in my mind, pull out that value that church has, the things of value that a church provides. Because something isn't with us for 2,000 years. Evolutionarily speaking, something does not survive for 2,000 years unless there's a certain amount of value to it. But it's also clear that parts of it have to go away. Parts of it are no longer relevant. And so I thought, okay, we'll do it without the metaphysical. We'll do everything else. We'll see how it goes. We'll try different things. One of my beliefs, and one of the things I learned from one of Mike's early churches, is if you think something needs doing, then go do it. Don't say, oh, somebody needs to do something about this. Go out and do it. One of the things that I would like to build into this community is if you think something needs to be happening, I don't remember the name, but somebody's saying, hey, we need a 12-step group. Okay, let's build a 12-step group. We need to do care for the elderly, let's do care for the elderly. If we need a vacation, whatever it is, school, then let's build that. Let's try it. If it doesn't work, okay. It's an experiment, but that's the scientific method, right? You try it, you make a hypothesis, you try it, and you learn from it. That's what we're trying to do here. When I look at my beliefs, my statement is on Sundays I'm an atheist, on Monday I'm an agnostic, on Tuesday I'm a theist, and every other Thursday I'm a Buddhist. I'm all over the map. I don't believe that any two people have the same faith. I mean, regardless of whether you go in church and profess a faith, profess a creed, or whatever, everybody's on a journey, and you're never in the same river twice. We're always moving along. So I wanted a place where people can come and know that wherever they are today, even if it's not the same as they were yesterday, they don't have to feel guilty about it. If you want to believe in God today, fine. If you want to not believe in God today, tomorrow, fine. If you want to go to some other church or to a church and partake in their rituals, fine. That's not our problem. We don't care. We don't care what your belief is. It's irrelevant to us. We're not anti-church. We're not pro-church. We're not church. It's not our business. It's your business. As long as you accept us and the people in this room for where they are, we'll accept you for where you are. And that's the point. I want a place where people can come together and be a community and not let faith get in the way. That was kind of my idea. And that's where, that's how we got here. And I looked at Mike and said, this is a man who can help teach us how to get there. He's been there, he knows that. He knows the faith community, he knows what's of value, and we can extract some of that stuff. Me, I'm an administrator. I mean, I'm not a philosopher, not a whatever. I'm a project manager in real life. So my job is organization, which is why I said, okay, I'll do the president thing, which doesn't actually require me to do anything. You'd be amazed at how much of leadership, especially if you get a group of people, is basically actually just delegating. So I strongly recommend that if you get pulled on one of these committees, like babysitting or Bible school or whatever, take the leadership role, because it's really easy if you do it right. You just let everybody else do the work. You just organize it, make sure it happens. That being said, I want to highlight some of the statements on our website, because while they are not something that we need to hammer home, they're not a creed or anything, they are, I think, fairly critical to understand our mission and what we're trying to accomplish. The first bullet point is people are more important than beliefs. And I absolutely believe that. That whatever we do, however we do, whoever you are, whatever you believe, if your beliefs are getting in the way and hurting people, then your beliefs are wrong. Period. People should not be being hurt because of some abstract concept that you believe. Now, that's just, from my point of view, basic ethics. The second is only humans can solve human problems. I don't mind somebody praying, saying they want to pray for me. I'm fine with that. But quite frankly, what that means to me is you're thinking about me. And if you're thinking about somebody, do something about it. If someone's hurting, do something. Maybe it's just a hug. Raise their oxytocin level for the day. Give them a hug. Give them a virtual hug on the internet. It doesn't matter, but do something. Don't just, that's one of the things I have disliked in some of the churches I've seen, is people will say, well, I'll pray for you, and it's like, okay, I've done check my box, I'm good. Do something, okay? This community is about doing, okay? That we plan on wanting it to be something where people can do, and as a vehicle and an opportunity for doing. As we grow, as we evolve, we'll see where we go with that. But I really think that if we don't do, if all we are is a group of people getting together and having coffee, then we might as well be a meetup. But I think we have an opportunity here. Okay. Next, reason is known through known through reason, not revelation. Now, individuals can have revelation. I think it was Thomas Paine. It says one person's revelation is another person's hearsay. I have no problem with revelation. I have no problem with the idea that the aha moment, I figured it out. Whether you believe that comes from beyond or inside your head or the psychology of it, whatever. I'm sure Mike will get into it at some point and explain it to us. But the point is that when you're talking with other people, you have to have reason. And so when we're discussing things, it isn't based on principles. It's based on reason. And I'm not interested in anybody's theology, whether it's capitalism, socialism, Christianity, Buddhism, or whatever. When we're talking about the problem, we use reason and we try and understand each other. Because in that communication and that understanding, we get to the things that are important to us. And that's how we're going to try and resolve things here. I want to make sure that we understand that. Meaning comes from making a difference. That's a big deal to me too. If you're going to have meaning in your life, it isn't about oh, have I done this thing or whatever. It means I've made a difference in somebody else's life. My brother, I have a sister who's very religious, and I have a brother who's very non-religious. But my brother is that we're a wave. We go through the world, and we make waves in the world. And how we make differences with those waves determines the value and meaning of our life. 1,000 years from now, almost nobody, virtually nobody in this room will be remembered. That's just a fact of life. How many people know? How many people who lived 1,000 years ago does anybody know the name of? 10, 100, 1,000 of the millions of people who lived then? But their waves, their meaning still moves up through us. And our meaning moves forward through that. So if you want to give your life meaning, it isn't about an afterlife, it isn't about whatever, it's about making a difference today. It's about doing things. And again, this doing things in a group is much more powerful than doing things as an individual. This part of this group is to give you the ability and a place to have meaning, to make meaning in your life, without having to worry about metaphysical or somebody threatening you or whatever. It's your choice, whatever you do. There's no threats, no fear. It's about love and oxytocin. And everybody should be accepted wherever they are, as long as they accept us. And this is one of those things. The only thing that's intolerable is intolerance. I will not, as president of this organization, the only thing I will not tolerate is someone coming down on somebody for where they are. For somebody coming down on an atheist for not believing, or on a Christian for believing. That isn't what we're about. It isn't about hurting people. It isn't about labels. It's about accepting everyone where they are and understanding that everyone is different. That no matter what you think your belief is, whether you think that you don't believe in God the same way somebody else doesn't believe in God, or whether you believe in God the same way somebody else believes in God, it's not a problem. It's about accepting that person as a unique, distinct, diverse, interesting individual. And everybody in this room is interesting, unique, and distinct, and worth caring about. And if I carry over one thing from the Christian stuff I learned in the 20 years I spent in the church, it's that people matter, and that everybody is worth caring about. So that's what I'm trying to do, is build a place where we can have that kind of thing without having to worry about whether we have to chase somebody off because they don't believe in the same things we believe in. As long as they're, to use somebody's term, people can self-deport if they want. But I do not want to chase anybody off, not unless they're actively trying to hurt somebody else. So that's what we're about. That's, at least in my mind, that's where my thinking was, and why I think this came into being. Other people may disagree, and that's fine. I would expect there to be a lot of diversity of opinion on that. But I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come here every Sunday and be with a group of people who have interesting things to say and interesting beliefs. I don't agree with necessarily everything everybody says when they come up with their community moment, but I appreciate it. I really do. I want people to be honest when they come up here, and I want to just have a good time, too. That's it. Thank you.
Hey guys, good morning. Thank you so much for your help. Today I've got a reading for you guys, hopefully activate certain parts of your brains. The Science of Good and Evil. So this is from a section called How We Are Moral. Herein lies the problem for our moral sensibilities. We are fed numbers daily that we cannot comprehend about threats to our security we cannot tolerate. Better safe than sorry, right? Not necessarily. Pathological fear takes a dramatic toll on our psyches and wallets. We waste tens of billions of dollars in person hours every year, Glassner notes, on largely mythical hazards like road rage, on prison cells occupied by people who pose little or no danger to others, on programs designed to protect young people from dangers that few of them ever face, on compensation for victims of metaphorical illnesses, and on technology to make airline travel, which is already safer than other means of transportation, safer still.
The author is Michael Shermer from the Science of Good and Evil. So, and I do want you to know that, you know, as we grow, that the intention is that we're going to bring in guest speakers every. So you're not going to have to hear me every week. But we have our first guest speaker lined up in December, Dr. Tony Pinn from Rice University, who will be awesome. And as we, you know, get more resources and get more connected, we'll find some other. You know, hopefully, I'd like to bring in some big names from the, you know, from all over the place, free thought movement and elsewhere. So, but I do want to pick up on that theme from Michael Shermer today, and I picked up another book this week called The Happiness Project. I actually forget, it was a #1 New York Times bestseller. It's kind of a fluffy read. It's not like deep, but it has some interesting tidbits in it. And the author, like I said, I forget her name at the moment, but towards the beginning of the book, she had compiled this, her personal secrets of adulthood. Things that she learned with great difficulty over the years, and I wanted to share a couple of them because I resonated with some of them. Like things you learn late in life. Most people don't notice your mistakes as much as you think. True. It's okay to ask for help. It's important to be nice to everyone. Bring a sweater. That even works in Texas too, the AC. You know. Most decisions don't require extensive research. If you can't find something, clean up. You can't profoundly change your children's natures by nagging them or signing them up for classes. People actually prefer that you buy wedding gifts off their registry. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And I like that a lot because that's our topic for today, is to err is human. And really some of the stuff that Gary said, I think segues nice with this as well. But I want to just spend a little bit of time thinking about, and we're going to have a little mutual discussion afterwards too with some reflection questions, but understanding why we err the way we do, maybe making us a little less hard on others and hard on ourselves, but mostly ourselves. I think for most of us, we are our own best critics or worst critics. There was this really famous video, it was a study done by a couple of psychologists. And you may have read about this if you've read some of Michael Shermer's other works. And they made a video of 2 teams of basketball players. One team wearing, each team had 3 players on it. One team was wearing white shirts, the other team wearing black shirts. And the people involved in the study were supposed to watch the basketball game being played as the white team passed the ball to each other and the black team passed the ball to each other. So you have this kind of thing going on. It wasn't really exactly a game, but they were passing the ball. And the only task they had to do was watch the video and count how many times the ball was passed between the white players. Just simple enough assignment. At the 35 seconds mark into the video, a man dressed in a gorilla suit walks onto the basketball court in the middle of the players, thumps his chest for 9 seconds, and then exits. Afterwards, the researchers asked the subjects if they noticed anything strange about the video. More than half never saw the gorilla. Yes, you can look this up. They have since replayed this video all over the world, and the amount of people who do not see the gorilla is pretty constant. More than half will not see the gorilla. Look up gorilla suit experiment and you'll see the pictures. It's pretty amazing. It doesn't work so well when you're watching pictures because I already told you the answer, but anyway, this is the technical term, I wrote it up there, inattentional blindness bias. And it has to make you wonder, how many gorillas do you and I miss every day? A lot, I bet. A lot. Neurologists tell us that we have blind spots in our field of vision, that our brain actually fills in, concocts images to make the blind spots work. Your field of hearing does the same thing, which is why that scene from Monty Python's Life of Brian is so funny when Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount and the guys in the back of the crowd say, "Blessed are the cheesemakers." And so all of us all the time are all dealing with limitations on our senses. We frequently don't see things or hear things, or we make decisions on lack of data. So you think the solution to that is get more people together because we'll fill in each other's blind spots. And the more people you have involved, you're going to kind of even out those gaps in the data that we're working with. So we would make better decisions together. But actually what happens a lot of times is you bring more flawed people together, it sometimes exacerbates the issue. I heard on an NPR business report not too long ago, they were talking about the United Continental merger, and I guess as they went in to form the new airline, they wanted to have the absolute best coffee in the entire airline business, and so they put together this task force that met for a year. And they had, what did they say? They had, they sampled hundreds and hundreds of different types of coffee. They included employees and customers in the taste testings. Thousands of people were involved. And after untold hours and money spent on the perfect airline coffee project, they unveiled their coffee to abysmal reviews. I mean, the airline passengers revolted, and they had to scratch the whole thing and go back to square one. It's just amazing. I was talking to someone the other day. Anyone here work for ConocoPhillips? I don't want to put you on the spot. You have to raise your hand. But I was talking to someone a while back at Starbucks who worked for ConocoPhillips, and he was talking about how they're going to split their upstream and downstream businesses, and they needed to come up with a new name for the downstream business. And the same type of thing. They put together a task force, studied it for a year, and you know what they came up with? Phillips 66. And some, I mean, for the younger people in the crowd, that's what it was called a long time ago. Back when I was religious, and Gary alluded to this too, this term sin, which is used to describe our flaws, foibles, and moral failures. And sin is described as this mysterious, malevolent force in the universe that literally infects human beings. And we have to fight it every day with all our might. And we experience this tension. And this is true. We do experience this tension a lot of times between what we know we should do and don't do, what we do and don't want to do. And Christian thinkers from Augustine to Luther to Calvin taught that we are in bondage to this force. We are inherently flawed. But the more I thought about sin, the less sense it made. Because to say that we're inherently flawed suggests that we have devolved from some kind of more perfect state, right? If you're flawed, that means there's some kind of perfection that we can attain to. And the fact is, that's just not true. There was never a time in history when humans were more perfect or less flawed than we are today. If anything, according to that book I mentioned last week from Steven Pinker, The Better Angels of Our Nature, and some other research has come out lately, we might actually be getting better, less flawed. So the idea of sin doesn't really work, but it is true, like I said, we do feel this struggle. I found out this morning that I missed the first 2 weeks of Monopoly at McDonald's. And I love Monopoly at McDonald's. I don't really eat at McDonald's all that much, but I got my first 2 things today and my little board, and it's only going until the 22nd. I'm going to McDonald's every day till the 22nd. We struggle. So this is what I want to bounce off you guys today, because this is my new pet theory about the struggle. There's a misconception about evolution or natural selection is all about a dog-eat-dog, brutal, every person for him or herself, survival of the fittest. I've had numerous Christians ask me since I came out, saying, well, how could you exchange the beautiful worldview of the Bible for the brutality and the bloodthirstiness of Darwin? And well, I'd like to talk about that another day, because Darwinian thought has only increased my wonder at the world. But there are, as you know, other evolutionary forces at work besides competition. There is individual selection, which that's the basic one we all think about. I was thinking about writing on the board, but I think you can handle this. Fundamental drive of every living entity on this planet is to survive and to get a copy of your DNA into the next generation. That, at kind of the level of reductionism, is what it all boils down to. So we want to live, we want to reproduce, or do the things that we're rewarded for, surviving and reproducing. There's an old saying that all of us are 9 missed meals away from murder. In my case, I think it's 3.5. But it's actually kind of true. But, of course, there's more than individual selection at work, because we Homo sapiens are a pro-social species, which means we aren't loners, we need others. The most successful eusocial species next to us, of course, is ants. I read this in E.O. Wilson's book, Social Conquest of the Earth, thank you. That, I love this factoid, that if you put all the ants in the world together in like a cube, and you put all the humans in the world together in a cube, the mass would be pretty equivalent. There are that many ants in the world. Cause some potential nightmares for Sunday afternoon naps, it looks like. But anyway, but the fact is, we're eusocial, like ants. We're pro-social. We're friendlier than ants. Our ancestors spent hundreds of thousands of years in tribal units of 100 to 150 people or so. So we didn't survive just by competing. We also survived by cooperating with others. That's where altruism comes from. The golden rule didn't come down from heaven. It was bred into us by evolution. You've all seen the stuff on the Nature Channel of like the primates sitting placidly in the grass, grooming each other, picking off the ticks and the mites. But apparently the grooming that primates do is more than just about picking the bugs off, because the fingers running through the fur release oxytocin. That calms the nerves and lowers the blood pressure. Apes, so they're essentially getting a massage. Apes spend about 10% of their lives grooming each other. Can you imagine what our world would be like if every single one of us spent 10% of every day getting a massage? But, I mean, yeah. Now, studies also show that animals that groom each other more in the morning are more likely to share food with each other in the afternoon. Oh, So, contrary to the theory of sin that says we are inherently selfish, and contrary even to some modern philosophies that say that humans are primarily driven by greed or self-interest. I mean, that was the model for many theories of economics for a long time, is that the assumption that the consumer was driven by self-interest is flat out not true. Because we are always, all the time, both experiencing self-interest and altruism. Both are in our DNA, both are necessary, and I think that's where the tension comes from. This thing that humanity has described as sin, or the internal struggle, or whatever. For me, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about it maybe later or after. Tell me, does that make sense? That it's this inherent, so to say that we're flawed or sinful or experience this tension that's like, in a sense, it's what defines us as humans. The tension between individual selection and group selection, the tension between self-interest and altruism. It's part of the beast. But all things considered, we're pretty darn good people. Very good at cooperation. I've conducted my own little study, because when I work on messages and articles and speeches and stuff like that, I tend to like to work at coffee shops. partly because I'm a social species. So when I need a break, there's human beings to talk to. But there are times when I lay out all my papers and notepads and stuff, my backpack on the table at Starbucks, and when I need to stretch my legs, use the restroom, get a refill, I'm basically lazy, so I just leave it all there. And you know what? Hardly anybody ever steals your stuff. Actually, nobody's ever stolen my stuff, ever. Now, chances are someday I'm going to get bitten for leaving everything there. Someone's going to steal something. But that would be statistically insignificant to the number of times that I left it there and nothing happened. Now, when that does happen, you're going to hear me go on a rant about the rate of crime in our country, right? Because if something does get stolen, why? I'm going to remember it forever, and it's going to traumatize me. Well, why? Because and this is another evolutionary thing. It'd be fun to explore more sometime, but just briefly, our brains are wired for negativity. Once upon a time, it served as a very effective survival tool to assume the worst, right? It paid off to assume that every snake is bad, rather than trust that there are some snakes that weren't going to take time to learn the friendly ones. No, those people died. Okay. Kind of makes you wonder about, what was his name? The Crocodile Hunter, Steve. Yeah, kind of like it'd be interesting to look at his DNA and figure out, because he, clearly didn't have a healthy fear of animals. But anyway, yeah. You remember? Did you guys learn this in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts? That poem for helping you distinguish between the coral snake and its look-alike. Red on black, you're okay, Jack. Red and yellow, kill a fellow. Okay, most useless poem ever, because if you ever encounter anything that looks like a coral snake, you ain't gonna take the time to think about the poem, right? And I'm pretty sure that's the same fundamental default negative response that is the reason that we so much dwell on our mistakes in life and beat ourselves up on, because we're wired for negativity. I'm sure you guys can all visualize like a bad grade you got on a report card once upon a time. That was an anomaly, but it stands out, right? You can picture, oh, I got a C in that class. You can still picture it. Or, critical comment from a teacher on a paper. Or, I remember a piano recital one time. I can't even talk about it now. It was, and so, but those mistakes, we dwell because we're wired for negativity. I did have a professor at Michigan, an English professor, who when you got a good grade on the paper, he put the, like the gold star like you got in first grade. And this was at college, and it actually really worked. You really wanted that gold star. So I just want to close with 3 quick strategies that might help us out in this department. Number 1, don't beat yourself up. But John and I were talking about this the other day, that if you phrase something negatively, here again, don't, it doesn't work. Like, don't put your finger in that socket, So rather than saying don't beat yourself up, just remember that you're only human. And we all have huge blind spots, and we all have gorillas in our lives that we're missing all the time. You're doing the best you can with what you got right now. I really believe that about most human beings. I've worked with parents for years and years and years, and I've run into this about parents beating themselves up when like their grown kids go through horrible problems in life and things didn't turn out the way they wanted. And I'm like, look, you can't beat yourself up. Okay? If you provided food, and this isn't Mike's opinion, this is reading a lot of Psychology Today. You're not supposed to be impressed by that. But honestly, if you provide food, clothing, a sense of security, and unconditional love, you've done everything you can reasonably do as a parent, and you are by definition a good parent. The rest is up to nature. It really is. Accentuating the positive can help overcome negativity. I did read, this was a fascinating study, I think it was in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Happiness Hypothesis, where where they had a test group, control group, and the test group was asked to keep a journal of things they were thankful for in life. Now, when you think of journal writing, I think I write something every day. The interesting thing about this experiment was the test group only had to write in their journal once a week. Once a week, name 5 things they were thankful for in their life that week. Control group, no journaling. At the end of 3 months, huge discrepancy on the levels of happiness and serotonin and oxytocin in the blood levels of the people who just took time to think about 5 things they were grateful for that week. I was really impressed with that. And then finally, in face of life's failures, and when you do mess up at the piano recital or anything else, persevere, hang in there. There's no telling what's coming. There's this really colorful guy who passed away, I think it was like last year, Momofuku Ando. He's actually born in Taiwan back during the Japanese occupation in the early 40s. He went to college in Japan and became a Japanese citizen. And he had a bunch of failures in life. In 1948, he did some time in prison for tax evasion. In 1958, at the age of 48, he had been through several business failures. He was literally penniless. And he started just messing around by cooking noodles and then sprinkling them with different flavorings and then drying them out and reconstituting them with hot water. And that was the beginning of instant ramen. And if you remember the company, Nissin, N-I-S-S-I-N, you see their packages all over the supermarkets now. In 1971, at the age of 62, he came up with the idea of putting the noodles in a styrofoam cup, the birth of cup noodles. He became a billionaire, many times over. The next factoid sounds like one of those corny illustrations, so I had to check it out, and apparently it's true. But for many decades, Babe Ruth was the home run king, but also for many decades, he held the major league record for the number of strikeouts at the same time. And we don't remember the Babe for the strikeouts, do we? And I think there's a big lesson. Just keep swinging the bat. Whatever you do, as long as you're alive, as long as there's breath in your body, you never know how the story is going to turn out, and it's never too late for something amazing to happen. Just get back in the box and swing the bat. What I'd like to do now is just take a couple minutes for our 2 reflection questions. I invite you to think about 3 to 5 things you're grateful for this week, and then what's on your bucket list? A couple items maybe. And you all know what the bucket list is, I guess. So take about a minute to think on that, and John will play some music for that minute, and then turn around and discuss with others those ideas. Big little group.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm playing tomorrow night, Shakespeare's, and that was to come out. That's on Memorial. Okay, so this is another song from the rock opera. This is a little love story element. And about 2 aliens that are in love and they have to leave the planet. It's really sad. We would take our walks at night beneath the myth-adjunking moons, like 2 distant satellites fading out of view. We were drunk on innocence, stolen years too soon, back and floating like a terrapin riding a typhoon. Ahoo, ah-da-da, ahoo, ah-da-da, ahoo, ah-da-da, ahoo, da-da, ahoo, ah-da-da, ahoo, ah-da-da, we hitched a ride on a water slide into a Nagaru's lagoon. The shadow men dancing then parade around the room. We were late to immigrate, far from the world we knew. I can still recall the pain
sparks ignite beneath the myth-adjunct moons, like two distant satellites fading out of view. Ah-ooh-ah-da-da, 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 ah-ooh-da-da, ah-ooh-ah-da-da,